We go to the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline. She covers the Browns for the Plain Dealer in Cleveland.com. She is Miss Mary Kay Cabot. Hello, Mary Kay.
How are you, Mary Kay?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We are well. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Let me ask you this one first. We'll get right to Sean McDermott. Buffalo gets rid of him yesterday. If you're the Browns, are you talking to him?
If I'm the Browns, I'm kicking the tires. I don't know if I will actually go through an interview with him, but I would pick up the phone and I would call and I would inquire, because that is what you do in a situation like this. That's what they have done with the other coaches, like Mike McDaniel, who they ended up interviewing, and with John Harbaugh, who they did a 45-minute preliminary phone call with. So, yes, I think that they will at least inquire. I don't know how far it will go, but they won't leave any stone unturned right now.
How legitimate do you believe the Jim Schwartz interview is for this job?
I think it's legitimate. They've always stated how much they really love Jim Schwartz and that they want him around. And so I definitely think it's legit. I think he's in the mix, just like the rest of these guys are that are getting second interviews. So I don't think you can count anyone out. And I don't think you can necessarily say that right now at this moment that there's a leader in the clubhouse.
Does the input of any player on this roster have anything to say with the head coaching hire?
Well, the defenders have all come out and supported Jim Schwartz. We know that. They love Jim Schwartz, and they want him at least as defensive coordinator, but they would also love him as head coach. I don't think that is going to sway the Browns one way or the other, at least not that much. It might, factor in, but it's not going to be the deciding factor. They have to do what they need to do for the long-term good of this football team, and you can't really necessarily be letting the players dictate what that would be.
Okay, Dan and I have said all along, ideally, we would love to see the Browns identify and find and hire their version of Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Sean McVay, and especially McVay with some of the young guys they're talking to. Are you confident that their committee can find a guy like that, or do you think it's a safer situation if they hire an experienced coach who has been there, done that? And in this case, obviously, the guy, it has to be Jim Schwartz or Mike McDaniel, even though Mike's still a pretty young guy.
Well, I think that you can take a leap of faith on one of these younger guys. You're looking for traits. You're looking for characteristics like leadership. Those are the kinds that things that you're looking for. The ability to assemble a staff. I do think that you can go out and find one of those guys. It might not be easy. There is that graphic that's going around where in 2022 there were 9 vacancies and only 2 remain in their current jobs. So it's certainly not easy, but I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a shot, taking a chance on one of these young rising stars in the game and see if you can't find your own Mike Tomlin.
That doesn't set you back too much if you miss?
Well, it might, but, that can happen even with an experienced veteran.
Sure can,
too,
yep.
Right? Because, with Jim Schwartz, we all know what Jim Schwartz is capable of in terms of being the defensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns. What we don't know about him either is what he would be like as a head coach in his second go-around. We don't really know that. So it's an inexact science. Sometimes you have to go with a gut feeling. And I remember back in 2016, it was Paul DePodesta, Sashi Brown, and Andrew Berry that really liked Sean McDermott. And so they would have been on to something with him. And unfortunately, they didn't get that opportunity at that time to do that because I believe the Haslams really liked Hugh Jackson. And so they didn't get to hire Sean McDermott, but they were on the right track in terms of just a young, up-and-coming coach who's also a great leader of men.
Mary Kay, a lot of the talk, and you mentioned it, they really like Jim Schwartz and everything else. If you're Jim and you've gone through 2 interviews and you've been here and you don't get the gig, would you stick around and be the defensive coordinator for one of these young guys?
It depends on the situation, and it depends on what your other opportunities are. It depends on the money. It depends on a lot of things. I don't think Jim has too much pride to stick around here as a very well-paid defensive coordinator of a defense like that. I don't think he has too much pride for that at all. And sometimes, if it works out the way that you hope it will, you might get another opportunity next year in that head coaching cycle. So I don't think that would be a deal breaker, but I don't know how Jim felt walking out of that building yesterday. I really don't know. Trying to find out what I can. The information, of course, is very hard to come by. Everyone's playing it very close to the vest. But I don't think that you can rule out him coming back as the defensive coordinator, even under one of the young guys.
Kay Cabot, Cleveland.com, and the Plain Dealer joining us on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline. How much input do you believe Jimmy Haslam has in this hire?
Oh, he's got input in this hire for sure. He's part of the search committee. I mean, Andrew Berry is leading the charge and driving the bus, but Jimmy's involved. He's going to be paying this coach multi-millions of dollars a year. So, yes, he's got a say in the matter. So does JW. So does D, I'm sure. So these guys are all involved, and they probably should be.
Okay, I was kicking this around with Dan before the show. Tell me if this means anything. The rest of the NFL has shown the Browns already what's wrong with their team and why it hasn't been successful based on this. Kevin Stefanski immediately becomes one of the top candidates and gets hired second in this hiring cycle. And everybody dwelled on the first 4 years and not the last two where, they won 8 games and didn't have a great offensive roster anyway. And then yesterday, Chad O'Shea gets hired by the Kansas City Chiefs, the Browns wide receiver coach under Kevin, gets hired by Kansas City. And we all know how lacking the Browns were at wide receiver. And yet their wide receiver coach, clearly respected at least by one of the better organizations in the NFL and more successful, and he gets hired. To me, this screams, okay, we don't think it's your coaching. We think it's your roster and your players, with Chad and with Kevin.
Well, Chad has won 3 Super Bowls in his career.
He's been in New England. Yeah.
Right. So he's been a very, very successful receivers coach and assistant coach. And so, yeah, I think he's going to be successful again when he has the right talent. If you look at, Jeff, you and I have been talking about this for a long time.
We have, Mary Kay. People are tired of us saying that, by the way.
Right. But this football team needs some premier pass catchers. It needs 3 really amazing pass catchers, and that is what you have to give your quarterback. I mean, you look at Joe Burrow and what he was able to do with all the great receivers that he's had. You look at what Joe Flacco was able to do when he went to Cincinnati. He left here, and he was not having success offensively. He went down there, and all of a sudden he was throwing touchdown passes again and throwing for over 300 yards again. That should tell you what you need to know, and they need to get it fixed. Now, they are overhauling this offense this offseason, and that's got to be the thing that they look at. It's probably tied with offensive line. Those two things are probably right behind quarterback.
Do you think there's any way they can get this? I don't even know where the threshold is to try to overhaul 5 offensive line spots and 3 wide receiver spots to league average after an offseason like this? Or is this a 2 to 3 year buckle in, folks, we're going to try some stuff rebuild?
Well, remember, they added a couple of really good pieces last year in Quinshawn, in Harold, and in Dylan Sampson. And then we'll see what happens with the quarterbacks. We'll see if Shedeur Sanders can take that next step up, or if they're going to give him the opportunity to take that next step up. So they added some key pieces last year. So they're not completely starting from scratch, but they do have a lot of holes to fill, and it probably will take 2 off seasons to get it exactly where they want it.
All right, Mary Kay, is it just me or does Grant Udinski look way too much like Johnny Manziel?
He really does, and I thought that the moment I saw him, I thought,
no, please.
I know there's no way that you can look at him and not see Johnny Manziel. I mean, maybe some people don't see it, but I saw it immediately and guessed it, right? And I'm sure so many other people are. So it's kind of funny, but yeah, we'll forgive him for that.
It cracked me up. Well, the other guys expected to have second interviews, Udinski and Shieldhouse, the young offensive guys. Jesse Minter, not necessarily a young guy. He's in his 40s. He's been around, but still looking for his first opportunity. And Mike McDaniel. Who intrigues you out of that group the most?
It's a good question. It's a really good question. I haven't settled upon my number one candidate yet.
Neither have I.
Yeah, I have not done that yet. I'm still doing my diligence, as we all like to say in the business. And I'm finding out such great things about so many of these guys. They're intriguing. They're smart. They have interesting backgrounds. They're so intelligent, brilliant, probably in most cases. Todd Monken, I'm very curious about the whole Todd Monken situation. That one, doesn't seem to fit the paradigm of what Andrew would be going for here, just because it seems like it's either, okay, Jim's here, he's their defensive coordinator, they know all about him. The other guys are real young, up-and-coming guys, and then you got Todd Monken. And so, I didn't really understand that one, but I loved covering Todd when he was here, and he's done a great job with Lamar Jackson. And they know him because obviously he was here in 2019. So that one's kind of interesting. I know they really like Mike McDaniel. They've long admired Mike McDaniel. So I can't pick one right now, but I do think that they have a very eclectic and interesting pool.
Mary Kay Cabot, Cleveland.com, and a Plain Dealer joining us on the hotline. Do you think they will also talk with Sean McDermott now that he's available?
Well, I think they will kick the tires on Sean McDermott. And as I said, I think that they will at least inquire about him, because that's what they do in this situation. That's what they do when a great player becomes available. So, yeah, I think they have to at least look into it. But whether or not it gets to the interview point, that remains to be seen. I mean, they kicked the tires on John Harbaugh, too, and it never got to the interview point. So I can't say where that's going, but I'm sure that they will at least do their diligence.
4 teams have hired coaches, 6 are looking. Timetable in your mind, Mary Kay? Do you think are they looking fast, or are they going to wait and make sure Nate Shieldhouse gets his second interview, and he can do that after this weekend?
I think they're going to wait and let Nate Shieldhouse get his second interview, unless they already had someone that they felt like that they liked better and they were in jeopardy of losing him. So these things can change on a dime. I think they want to go through their process, and I think they want to do their second interview with Nate, but I'm not sure it will be able to get to that point.
Mary Kay, let's just take a half step back here. 10 openings? 10? Is this really where we are in the NFL, where all of a sudden we're just going to run into a third of the league just deciding to eject their coaches and start looking elsewhere? Because
it's pretty stunning, isn't it?
It's nuts to think about 10.
It really is, and I think it's a function of the quarterback situation. You have to have a really, really good quarterback. Now, some of the coaches that were let go, they did have really good quarterbacks, but the expectations are so high, the bar is so high. So even if you have Josh Allen and you're getting deep into the playoffs, if you're not making it to the AFC Championship game in the Super Bowl, that's where the bar is set when you have a Josh Allen. So I do kind of see where they were going with that. But in a lot of the other cases, it's really, really difficult to win unless you have the quarterback.
What do you think about the Lions hiring Drew Petzing, the former Browns quarterback coach, Arizona offensive coordinator? Lions bringing him in as their offensive coordinator. Yeah,
good for him. That's terrific. We always knew when he was here that he was one of those up-and-coming coaches that was going to go far. I thought he might end up, sticking around here and climbing the ranks here in Cleveland. But he's done a really nice job wherever he's been, and I think that'll be a good gig for him.
How about Atlanta Falcons hiring Kevin? Is that a good gig for him?
I think so. I think my only question for that whole situation is the quarterback situation. Kirk Cousins is in a little bit of a state of flux with the whole contract thing, so maybe they can get that worked out. And then Michael Penix is coming off of an injury, and I'm not sure exactly when he's going to be healthy and ready to go. And, you just never know how a young quarterback like that is going to fare. So Kevin will do well if he has a good quarterback situation there.
Were you surprised at all at the interest that Kevin received, Mary Kay? And I think you thought he would get interviews. I thought he would get interviews. The only thing about this that surprised me was we saw Kevin at times, and did he coach, perfectly every game out? No, of course not. And in the last 2 years were tough, and there were times when you thought, boy, that wasn't what you wanted. Those things seem to be ignored by other teams and by everything that you read being written about Kevin. And boy, those first 4 years were what everybody seemed to cling to. That surprised me just a little bit.
Well, I do think that people look at Cleveland in general and believe that it is not the greatest situation to flourish or function in for some people, some coaches, some quarterbacks. And I don't think that's the case, but I think the outside world probably looks at this and says, oh, well, of course they couldn't be successful there. It was Cleveland. And I think that the Browns are still working off that reputation. And so I do believe that teams looked at Kevin and thought, it's hard to make NFL Coach of the Year twice, and that there must be something to him. And I agree with that.
Thank you for your time today. It's a busy time, and you'll be writing all about it in the plaindealercleveland.com as the Browns are looking for a coach. So we'll look forward to your extended coverage. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Mary Kay.
Sure. Thanks, guys.
Mary Kay Cabot joining us on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline.